Welcome to the Boring Verbivore. Tonight, let the gentle language of video games guide you to restful slumber. Close your eyes as we journey through respawns, save points, and pixelated dreams. Press pause on your day and prepare to drift away. One soothing term at a time. The images are dark. The voice is soothing, curated just for you. Let's begin. 1cc, abbreviation of 1 credit completion or 1 coin clear, to complete an arcade or arcade-style game without using continues. 1-up, an object that gives the player an extra life or attempt in games where the player has a limited number of chances to complete a game or level. 100%, to collect all collectibles, or to also obtain all achievements within a game, either indicated within games as a percentage counter or determined by player community consensus. 1v1, an abbreviation of 1 versus 1, denoting 2 players battling against each other, can be extended to any player versus player grouping, such as 2v2 to mean 2 teams of 2 battling each other, or 1v4 to refer to a team of 4 players against 1. 2D graphics, graphic rendering technique in a 2-dimensional perspective, often using sprites. 2.5D graphics, also isometric graphics, graphic rendering technique of 3-dimensional objects set in a 2-dimensional plane of movement, often includes games where some objects are still rendered as sprites. 360 no-scope. A 360 no-scope usually refers to a trick shot in a first or third-person shooter video game, in which one player kills another with a sniper rifle by first spinning a full circle and then quickly shooting without looking through the scope. 3D graphics, graphic rendering technique featuring 3-dimensional objects. 4K resolution, an aspect ratio of digital display devices such as televisions and monitors, supporting up to 3840 by 2160 pixel resolutions. 4X, a genre of strategic video games, short for explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Such games are usually complicated, involving extensive diplomacy, technology trees, and win conditions. 8-bit, a descriptor for hardware or software that arose during the 3rd generation of video game consoles, targeting 8-bit computer architecture. 8K resolution, an aspect ratio of digital display devices such as televisions and monitors, supporting up to 7680 by 4320 pixel resolutions. 16-bit, a descriptor for hardware or software that arose during the 4th generation of video game consoles, targeting 16-bit computer architecture. 32-bit, a descriptor for hardware or software that arose during the 5th generation of video game consoles, targeting 32-bit computer architecture. 64-bit, a descriptor for hardware or software that arose during the 5th generation of video game consoles, targeting 64-bit computing architecture. LAA, also AAA, a high-budget game with a large development team. A games are usually multi-platform or a first-party, have multi-million-dollar budgets, and expect to sell millions of copies. Abandonware, a game that is forgotten about or abandoned by its developers for any number of reasons, including copyright issues. Ace, usually used within first-person shooters, where a single player manages to eliminate the entire opposing team by themselves while their teammates are alive. Can also be used to describe situations where a player manages to complete a possibly difficult section of game flawlessly. Achievement, also badge, trophy, medal, chivo. Meta goals defined outside a game's parameters may be external achievements such as those on Xbox Live or Steam, internal achievements such as those in Clash of Clans or both. Achievement hunter, a player who attempts to collect all achievements in a game. Achievement hunters tend to be completionists. Act, sometimes used to refer to individual levels or groups of levels that make up a larger world or storyline. Rarely refers to a downloadable game intended to be part of a larger series which functions as a single game series and gameplay-wise. Action game, a game genre emphasizing hand-eye coordination, reflexes, timing, and other physical skills. It includes fighting games, shooters, and platformers. Action point AP, a subunit of a player's turn. For example, a game may allow an action to occur only so long as the player has sufficient action points to complete the action. Action role-playing game, ARPG, a genre of role-playing video game where battle actions are performed in real time instead of a turn-based mechanic. Actions per minute, APM, the total number of actions that a player can perform in a minute. Adaptive music, game music which changes and reacts to the actions of the player and state of the game in an attempt to better reflect the game atmosphere. Adaptive AI, a form of artificial intelligence which takes data based on how the player performs and uses it to learn to better counter the player. Add-on, see downloadable content. Ads, a term used commonly in role-playing video games, MMORPGs and beat-em-ups, referring to the additional enemies called in by bosses during encounters. Advance and Secure, AAS, a player versus player team-based game mode used in tactical first-person shooter games, where the players on opposing teams must capture certain predefined points of interest in a game environment in a certain preset order. Adventure game, a game genre which emphasizes exploration and puzzle solving. AFK meaning away from keyboard. Generally said through a chat function in online multiplayer games when a player intends to be temporarily unavailable. Aggro, an abbreviation of aggravation or aggression. Causing aggro or aggroing in a video game means to attract hostile attention from NPCs or enemies to attack the player character. Managing aggro involves keeping aggressive NPCs from overwhelming the player or party. Aimbot, a first-person shooter cheat that allows a player's weapon to automatically aim at a target. In most cases, the aiming reticle locks onto a target within the player's line of sight, and the player only has to pull the trigger. Aiming down sights, ADS, also aim down sights, refers to the common alternate method of firing a gun in a first-person shooter, FPS game, typically activated by the right mouse button. In most games, this greatly increases accuracy, but can limit vision, situational awareness, mobility, and require a small amount of time to change the weapon position. Alpha release, an initial incomplete version of a game. Alpha versions are usually released early in the development process to test a game's most critical functionality and prototype design concepts. Alt, short for alternate, the focus on gameplay progression, development of other available characters or classes in a game after one has completed the development of a favored main character. Always-on DRM, a type of digital rights management, DRM, that typically requires a connection to the internet while playing the game. Analog stick, also control stick and thumbstick. A small variation of a joystick usually placed on a game controller to allow a player more fluent two-dimensional input than is possible with a D-pad. Animatic, a partially animated storyboard with sound effects used during early game development. Animation priority, a type of gameplay mechanic in which the playable character's animations have priority over the player's input. In other words, if the player begins an action with a long animation, the animation must play out first before the player can then enter a new command, and attempting to enter a new command will have no effect. Anti-aim, a type of cheat commonly found in first-person shooter games that makes it difficult or impossible for the user's hitboxes to be hit. Anti-RPG, a role-playing video game that subverts the typical elements of such games. Any percent, a type of speedrun in which the player's objective is to reach the game's end goal as quickly as possible without regard to the normal intermediate steps. AoE, See Area of Effect, also abbreviation of Age of Empires. Arcade game, a coin-operated, coin-op video game usually contained in an upright, tabletop, cocktail or candy cabinet, or semi-enclosed sit-down cabinet. Popular primarily during the late 1970s to 1990s in the West, and still popular in the East to the present day. Area of Effect, AoE, a term used in many role-playing and strategy games to describe attacks or other effects that affect multiple targets within a specified area. For example, in the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, a fireball spell will deal damage to anyone within a certain radius of where it strikes. Arena mode, a side game mode, mostly found in some action-adventure games, in which a player-controlled character is placed in a closed area and challenged to defeat enemies using combat abilities. Arena FPS, arena shooters that use the first-person perspective. Arena shooter, shooting games that are typically based on fast-paced gameplay and in a limited map or level space. Artificial intelligence, AI, algorithms used to generate responsive, adaptive, or intelligent game behavior, primarily in non-player characters. ARPG, See Action Role-Playing Game, Assault Mode, a game mode in which one team tries to attack or capture specific areas and the other team tries to defend those points. Asset flipping, the practice of creating a game using free art and audio assets, either from an online marketplace or the default stock of assets included with many game engines. Asset flips are often of very poor quality, designed to catch onto a currently popular theme to turn a quick profit. Asymmetric gameplay, cooperative or competitive multiplayer games in which each player will have a different experience arising from differences in gameplay, controls, or in-game character options that are part of the game. Asynchronous gameplay, competitive multiplayer games where the players do not have to be participating at the same time. Such games are usually turn-based, with each player planning a strategy for the upcoming turn. Attract mode, also display mode and show mode. A pre-recorded demonstration of a video game that is displayed when the game is not being played. Originally built into arcade games, the main purpose of the attract mode is to entice passers-by to play the game. AUG, Steyr-AUG. An AUG is an abbreviated nickname for a long-scoped burst rifle, especially in Fortnite, as well as other shooter games. An AUG is a real gun, and the real inspiration for in-game burst rifles. Augmented reality, MR, supplementing a real-world environment with computer-generated perceptual information, with matching alignment to the real world, which may add to or mask the physical environment. Auto-battler, also known as auto-chess, a subgenre of strategy games that feature chess-like elements, where players place characters on a grid-shaped battlefield during a preparation phase, who then fight the opposing team's characters without any further direct input from the player. Auto-aim, also aim assist, a game mechanic built into some games to decrease the level of difficulty by locking onto or near targets for faster aiming. Auto-run, a system in video games that causes the player character to move forward without input from the user. The system is predominantly used in platform games. Autosave, a saving function in many video games that saves the current progress without the player's input, often after completing a mission, level, or winning a match. Avatar, the player's representation in the game world. B2P, buy to play, see games as a product. B-hopping, also bunny hopping, repeated use of the jump button while moving, which increases the character's momentum in some games, originally a glitch in Quake engine games. Backfill, also backfilling, a system of many competitive team-based multiplayer games that automatically finds a new player based on their skill level in an already existing game in case of one player leaving it. Badge, also achievement, an indicator of accomplishment or skill, showing that the player has performed some particular action within the game. Balance, aspects of a multiplayer game that keep it fair for all players. This usually refers to balance between characters and options. Ban, also ban hammer. In online games, the act of kicking a player from the server and then employing means of preventing them from returning. Ban wave, a mass banning event targeting cheaters. Banner, what players usually call the gacha mechanic in a game. Depending on the game, it can stick around indefinitely or have a time limit. Battle Pass, a type of in-game monetization that provides additional content for a game through a tiered system, rewarding the player with in-game items by playing the game and completing specific challenges. Battle Royale game, a video game genre that blends elements of survival games with last man standing gameplay. Players search for equipment while eliminating competitors in a shrinking safe zone. Best in slot, any item or ability that can be considered the best possible option in a given slot. This can vary between players and playstyles. Beta release, also beta testing, an early release of a video game following its alpha release, where the game developer seeks feedback from players and testers to remove bugs prior to the product's commercial release. Blacklist, in online games, a list of player information such as player ID or IP address that the server checks for when admitting a player. By default, players are allowed to enter, but if they match information on the blacklist, they are barred from entry. BM, bad manners, conduct that is not considered cheating, but may be seen as unsportsmanlike or disrespectful. Board, sea level. Boomer shooter, a first-person shooter designed to resemble older games in the genre such as Doom and Quake. The name is derived from the baby boomer generation. Booster pack, a random assortment of cards in digital collectible card games that players can buy or earn to add to their deck. Boosting, in online multiplayer games that include ranked competitive play. Boosting is where a player with a low-ranked level has a more skilled player use their account to improve the low-ranked character to higher levels. Bonus stage, a special level in which the player has a chance to earn extra points or power-ups, often in the form of a minigame. Borderless full-screen windowed, an option featured in many modern PC games in which a game appears full-screen but is actually running in a maximized window. Since the game does not take full control of the output device, it confers benefits such as seamless task switching. Boss, a significantly powerful opponent, non-player character and computer-controlled enemy in a video game that is typically much more difficult to defeat compared to normal enemies, often at the end of a level or a game. Bot, short for robot, a non-playable character which is controlled by an artificial intelligence, AI. The player may compete against or work with a bot to complete objectives. Bottomless pit, a hazard common in platform and action games, which consists of a deep hole or void with no visible bottom, presumably leading to a fatal drop. Buff, an effect placed on a video game character that beneficially increases one or more of their statistics or characteristics for a temporary period. Also, a change intended to strengthen a particular item, tactic, ability or character, ostensibly for balancing purposes. Build crafting, the ability in games to define the player character's abilities by selecting appropriate gear, equipment, and accessories to optimize and maximize the character's performance in the game. Build order, also build order, an optimal sequence of player actions in a building-based strategy game dictating what options should be constructed in what order. Bullet hell, a type of shoot-'em-up where the player must generally dodge an overwhelmingly large number of enemies and their projectiles. Bullet sponge, any enemy that appears to require more firepower than would be considered realistic or reasonable to defeat. Bullshot, a portmanteau of bullshit and screenshot, referring to the misrepresentation of a final product's technical or artistic quality by artificially enhancing promotional images or video footage. Button mashing, the pressing of different button combinations in rapid succession to perform or attempt to perform special moves, typically with little rhyme or reason. Breach, common name for the value that dictates how much stun a weapon deals. Campaign mode, also story mode and campaign, a series of game levels intended to tell a linear story. Some campaigns feature multiple paths, with the player's actions deciding which path the story will follow. Camping, where a player stays in one place, typically a fortified high-traffic location, for an extended period of time and waits to ambush other players. Also, the act of waiting around a rare mob or player's spawn point. Capture the flag, CTF, a common game mode in multiplayer video games, where the goal is to capture and retrieve a flag from the opposing side's territory while defending the flag in one's own territory. Carry, in team-based video games when a player disproportionately contributes to the success of their team. Cartridge tilting, deliberately inducing glitches and other strange behavior in cartridge-based games by tilting the cartridge slightly in its slot in the console. Casual gaming, playing video games on an infrequent and spontaneous basis without a long-term commitment. Casual video games are distinguished by a low learning curve and ease of access. Challenge mode, a game mode offered beyond the game's normal play mode that tasks the player to replay parts of the game or special levels under specific conditions that are not normally present or required in the main game. Character class, a job or profession that comes with a set of abilities as well as positive and negative attributes, most common in role-playing games. Character creator, an in-game method to customize a character to the player's preferred appearance and abilities before starting the game, most commonly used in role-playing games. Character select screen, also character select, a concept in games with multiple characters, a screen with names or pictures of all playable characters with the possibility of stat listings. Charge shot, a shot that can be charged up so that a stronger attack can be dealt, but requiring more time, usually performed by holding the shot button. Cheat, a game code that allows the player to beat the game or acquire benefits without earning them. Cheats are used by designers to test the game during development and are often left in the release version. Cheating, to play the game unfairly, giving an unfair advantage via illegitimate means. Checkpoint, an area in a level from which the player will start the level from next time they die, rather than having to start the level over. Cheese or cheesing, cheese-ing, refers to a tactic in a video game that may be considered cheap, unfair or overly easy, requiring no skill by others as to otherwise complete a difficult task. Clip, also magazine, in shooter games the ammunition container for a weapon that must be reloaded when empty. Clipping, a 3D graphics term where objects or parts of objects pass through other solid objects, which typically should not happen in reality. Clone, a game that closely mimics the gameplay, mechanics, or concept of another game, often seen as a copy or imitation. Clutch, a situation where a player performs exceptionally well under pressure, often when at a significant disadvantage, to secure victory for their team. Co-op, short for cooperative gameplay, a mode where players work together against computer opponents rather than against each other. Collectible, items scattered throughout a game world that players can gather, often for completion percentage or special rewards. Combo, a sequence of attacks or moves that are chained together, often in fighting games to create a more powerful or effective assault. Completionist, a type of player who aims to achieve 100% completion in games, collecting all items, achievements, and exploring all content. Console, a dedicated gaming device designed to play video games, typically connected to a television or monitor. Controller, a handheld input device used to interact with video games featuring buttons, analog sticks, and other controls. Cooldown, a period of time during which a player cannot use a particular ability or action again after using it once. Cover system, a gameplay mechanic that allows players to take shelter behind objects or walls to avoid enemy fire. Common in third-person shooters. Crafting, a game mechanic that allows players to create new items, weapons, or equipment by combining various materials or components. Critical hit, also critical, an attack that deals significantly more damage than normal, often determined by chance or specific conditions. Cross-platform, the ability for players on different gaming systems or platforms to play together in the same game. Cutscene, a non-interactive sequence in a video game that advances the story, provides exposition, or showcases dramatic moments. D-pad, directional pad, a cross-shaped control pad on game controllers used for directional input, consisting of 4 buttons arranged in a plus sign formation. Damage over time, DOT, a type of attack or effect that continuously reduces a character's health over a specified period rather than dealing damage instantly. Damage per second, DPS, a measurement of how much damage a weapon, character, or attack can inflict per second, also refers to a character role focused on dealing damage. Deathmatch, a multiplayer game mode where players compete to achieve the highest number of kills within a time limit or kill target. Debuff, a temporary negative effect placed on a character that reduces their abilities, stats, or performance. Debug mode, a special mode in games that provides developers, and sometimes players, with tools to test, modify, or examine game mechanics and systems. Difficulty, the level of challenge in a game, often adjustable through settings that affect enemy strength, puzzle complexity, or resource availability. Digital rights management, DRM, technology used to control access to copyrighted digital content, often requiring authentication or online verification to play games. DLC, downloadable content, additional game content that can be purchased and downloaded separately from the main game, such as new levels, characters, or storylines. Double jump, a gameplay mechanic that allows characters to jump a second time while in mid-air, enabling access to higher platforms or longer distances. Down but not out, DBNO, a state in some games where a player character is incapacitated but can be revived by teammates rather than immediately dying. Drop rate, the probability or frequency at which specific items, rewards, or loot are obtained from defeated enemies, opened containers, or completed activities. Dungeon, a location in role-playing games, typically underground or enclosed, containing enemies, treasures, and challenges for players to overcome. Early access, a development approach where players can purchase and play an unfinished game during its development process, providing feedback to developers. Easter egg, a hidden message, feature, or reference intentionally placed by developers in a game, often as a joke or tribute. Emulator, software that allows games designed for one system to be played on different hardware by mimicking the original system's functionality. Endgame, content or activities available to players after completing the main story or reaching the maximum level, designed to provide continued gameplay. Esports, electronic sports. Organize competitive gaming events, often with professional players, teams, and significant prize money. Experience points, XP. Points awarded to characters for completing actions, defeating enemies, or accomplishing objectives, used to measure progress toward leveling up. Exploit. Taking advantage of a bug, glitch, or unintended game mechanic to gain an unfair advantage or achieve something not intended by the developers. F2P, free to play. Games that can be downloaded and played without initial purchase, typically monetized through in-game purchases or advertisements. Farming, repeatedly performing specific actions or visiting certain areas to gather resources, experience points, or rare items. Fast travel, a feature allowing players to quickly move between previously visited locations without manually traversing the distance. Field of view, FOV, the extent of the game world visible on screen at any given moment, often adjustable in first-person games. Final boss, the last and typically most challenging opponent in a game, usually representing the climax of the main storyline. First person, a camera perspective where the player sees the game world through the eyes of their character. First-person shooter, FPS, a genre where players use firearms and other weapons from a first-person perspective to combat enemies. Fog of war, a gameplay element where parts of the game map are hidden or obscured until the player explores those areas. Frame rate, the frequency at which consecutive images, frames, are displayed in a video game, typically measured in frames per second. FPS, free to play, CF2P, friendly fire, the ability for players to damage or harm their own teammates, either intentionally or accidentally. Game engine, the software framework used to develop and run video games, providing core functionalities like graphics rendering, physics, and audio. Game over, the condition that occurs when a player has failed to meet the game's requirements, typically resulting in the end of the current play session. Gameplay, the interactive elements and mechanics that define how players interact with and experience a video game. Gamer, a person who regularly plays video games, often used to describe someone for whom gaming is a significant hobby or interest. Ganking, in multiplayer games, ambushing or attacking an unsuspecting player, often when they are outnumbered or at a disadvantage. Ghost, in racing games, a semi-transparent representation of a previous lap time or another player's performance that can be raced against. Gibs, gore effects showing body parts or chunks that scatter when a character is killed, particularly in violent action games. Glitch, an unintended error or bug in a game's programming that can cause unexpected behavior, visual artifacts, or gameplay issues. God mode, a cheat or game state that makes the player character invulnerable to damage or death. Griefing, deliberately harassing, annoying, or disrupting other players' gaming experience, often in multiplayer games. Grinding, performing repetitive tasks or actions in a game to gain experience points, levels, items, or other rewards. Guild, a group or organization of players who band together in multiplayer games for social interaction, cooperation, and shared objectives. Hack and slash, a genre or gameplay style emphasizing combat with melee weapons against large numbers of enemies. Hacking, in gaming context, either referring to puzzle-solving mechanics involving computer systems or illegally modifying game code. Hardcore, a difficulty mode or gaming approach that typically features permanent consequences for failure, such as character death. Health, also hit points HP, a numerical representation of how much damage a character can sustain before dying or being defeated. High score, the best performance achievement in a game typically measured by points, time, or other metrics. Hitbox, an invisible boundary around a character or object that determined where attacks can successfully connect. HUD, heads-up display. The user interface elements displayed on screen during gameplay, showing information like health, ammunition, maps, and other game data. Indie game, an independently developed game, typically created by small teams or individuals without support from major publishers. Inventory, a system for managing and storing items, equipment, and resources that a player character possesses. Invincibility frames, also I-frames, brief periods during certain actions like dodging, where a character cannot take damage. Item, any object in a game that can be collected, used, equipped, or interacted with by the player. Joystick, an input device consisting of a movable stick that can be tilted in various directions to control movement or camera angles. Jump scare, a sudden, startling moment designed to frighten the player, common in horror games. Lag, delay between a player's input and the game's response, typically caused by network connectivity issues in online games. Leaderboard, a ranking system that displays the best performances or highest scores achieved by players. Level, a discrete section or stage of a game with specific objectives, environments, and challenges. Level up, the process of a character gaining increased abilities, statistics, or access to new content upon reaching certain experience thresholds. Life, one of a limited number of attempts or chances a player has to complete a game or level before receiving a game over. Loading screen, a screen displayed while a game loads new content, levels, or areas, often featuring tips, artwork, or progress indicators. Loot, items, rewards, or treasure that players can collect from defeated enemies, chests, or completed objectives. Loot box, a purchasable container that provides random rewards or items, often controversial due to gambling-like mechanics. Main quest, the primary storyline or central objectives that drive the game's narrative forward. Mana, a resource used to cast spells or use magical abilities, typically regenerating over time or through specific actions. Matchmaking, an automated system that pairs players of similar skill levels together for multiplayer games. Minigame, a small, simple game within a larger game, often with different rules or objectives than the main gameplay. MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, a genre where large numbers of players interact in a persistent virtual world. Mod, short for modification, user-created content that alters or extends a game's original features, graphics, or gameplay. Multiplayer, a game mode that allows multiple players to participate in the same game session, either cooperatively or competitively. Nerf, to reduce the power, effectiveness, or capabilities of a weapon, character, or game mechanic, typically for balance purposes. New Game Plus, NG+, a game mode that allows players to restart the game while retaining some progress, abilities, or items from a previous playthrough. NPC, non-player character, any character in a game that is not controlled by a human player but by the game's artificial intelligence. Open world, a game design that provides players with freedom to explore a large interconnected environment without linear restrictions. Overpowered, OP, a term describing something in a game that is too strong or effective compared to alternatives, potentially breaking game balance. Patch, an update to a game that fixes bugs, balances gameplay elements, or adds new content. Pay to win, P2W, a monetization model where players can purchase items or advantages that provide significant gameplay benefits over non-paying players. Permadeath, a game mechanic where character death is permanent, requiring the player to start over completely. Platform game, also platformer. A genre where players control a character who must navigate by jumping between suspended platforms and avoiding obstacles. Player versus environment, PvE. Game content where players face computer-controlled opponents and challenges rather than other human players. Player versus player, PvP. Game modes or areas where human players compete directly against each other. Power-up. A temporary enhancement or special ability that improves a character's capabilities for a limited time. Puzzle game. A genre focused on solving logical problems, pattern recognition, or spatial reasoning challenges. Quest. A specific task, mission, or objective given to players, often involving travel, combat, or problem solving. QuickTime event, QTE. An interactive cutscene requiring players to press specific buttons at precise times to succeed. Rage quit. Abruptly leaving a game in anger or frustration, typically due to poor performance or unfavorable circumstances. Random number generator, RNG. A system that generates unpredictable results, used for damage variation, item drops, and other chance-based mechanics. Real-time strategy, RTS. A strategy game genre where players make decisions and take action simultaneously rather than in turns. Respawn. The process of a player character returning to life or reappearing in the game world after being defeated. Role-playing game, RPG. A genre where players assume the roles of characters and develop their abilities through experience and equipment. Sandbox. A game or mode that provides players with tools and freedom to create, modify, or explore without specific objectives. Save game. A file that stores the player's progress, allowing them to continue from where they left off at a later time. Side quest. Optional objectives or missions that are not essential to the main storyline but provide additional content and rewards. Simulation game. A genre that attempts to replicate real-world activities or systems, allowing players to experiment and learn. Single player. A game mode designed for one player to experience alone, without interaction with other human players. Spawn. The point where players, enemies, or items appear or reappear in the game world. Speedrun. Attempting to complete a game or specific objectives as quickly as possible, often with established rules and categories. Strategy game. A genre that emphasizes strategic thinking, planning, and resource management to achieve victory. Turn-based. A game mechanic where players take turns making moves or decisions in a specific order. Tutorial. An instructional section of a game designed to teach players basic controls, mechanics, and concepts. Unlockable. Content, features, or items that become available only after meeting specific requirements or achievements. Update. A modification to a game that adds new content, fixes issues, or changes existing features. Virtual reality, VR. Technology that creates immersive three-dimensional environments that players can interact with using specialized equipment. Walkthrough. A detailed guide that provides step-by-step instructions for completing a game or solving specific challenges. World. The game environment or universe where the action takes place, including all locations, characters, and lore. XP. See experience points. Zone. A distinct area or region within a game world, often with unique characteristics, enemies, or objectives. You've just wandered through a quiet garden of video game words, each one a whisper, a rhythm, a resting place for your thoughts. There's no need to remember them. They were here only to guide you, gently, into stillness. If you're still awake, that's okay. Just let the silence wrap around you now. And when sleep comes, let it be soft and full of wonder. Good night.